For over 3 decades, the world believed it knew everything about Michael Jackson. His fame, his music, his controversies. Every moment of his life seemed to be under a spotlight. But there was one moment, one secret, that even his most loyal fans were never told. A story buried deep within the Jackson family. A truth so painful that they locked away, terrified of what would happen if the world ever found out. It happened in the early 1990s, at the height of his power, a night when the king of pop's greatest fear shattered his smile in front of those who loved him most. A night when Michael Jackson confessed something so shocking, so emotional, that his family vowed never to speak of it again. A secret that changed his music. A secret that changed his destiny. A secret that could finally explain why the most loved entertainer on earth slowly faded into isolation. Tonight, after 30 years of silence, you're about to hear the truth his family tried to protect at all costs. Before we continue, take 1 second and help us keep Michael's legacy alive. Make sure to subscribe, like this video, and activate the notification bell so you never miss our emotional and revealing stories about Michael Jackson. What you are about to discover may change the way you see him forever. It was far past midnight when the storm finally arrived. Rain hammered against the windows of the quiet Los Angeles home, lightning flashing through the curtains like the night sky was trying to expose every secret hiding in the dark. Most of the world slept peacefully, but Michael Jackson sat wide awake, staring at something he hadn't looked at in decades. A box, not a large one, not heavy, but dangerous, at least to his heart. It sat on his lap like a memory he no longer wanted but could never let go of. The cardboard edges were worn, as if time itself had tried and failed to destroy it. His fingers hovered above the lid, hesitant, shaking. He whispered to himself, "Why tonight? Why now?" Because he knew the truth. He wasn't the one who chose tonight. Tonight chose him. His room was dim, illuminated only by a single lamp beside the bed. The house was quiet. Too quiet for someone who had spent a lifetime surrounded by crowds, music, lights. Silence made Michael uneasy. In silence, the mind remembered everything the heart tried to bury. With a deep breath, he lifted the lid. Inside were tapes, old VHS tapes with faded handwriting, pages torn from forgotten journals, a small collection of photos, and something wrapped in black velvet that instantly made his pulse spike. He didn't reach for the velvet first. He couldn't. Instead, he picked up a VHS tape. The label was handwritten, the ink smudged by time. "Never share, for me only." Michael frowned. He didn't remember writing that. His thumb traced the letter slowly. A chill crawled across his arms despite the warm room. He set the tape aside and lifted a photograph from a box. It was a picture of him backstage during the Victory Tour, smiling, youthful, unstoppable. The Michael the world adored. But his eyes weren't on himself. They were on the person beside him, a young man, late 20s maybe, unfamiliar. Yet for some reason, the sight of him made Michael's stomach twist. He whispered, "Who are you?" Thunder cracked loudly outside. Michael flinched, but didn't look away from the picture. He didn't want to. He felt like if he blinked, the stranger might disappear again, just like he vanished from Michael's memories long ago. His gaze dropped to the velvet-wrapped object. He slowly unwrapped it, revealing a small silver key, scratched, old, filled with stories he couldn't remember anymore. But the moment he touched it, memories flooded back. A hallway, fear, his heart pounding, someone grabbing his arm, a voice saying, "Don't ever open that room again. Never." Michael gasped and dropped the key as if it burned him. His breathing quickened, and he pressed a hand to his chest. He felt dizzy. Disoriented. This wasn't just a box. It was a warning. A door back into something he had locked away for a reason. He stood quickly, pacing the room, running his fingers through his hair. No, I shouldn't have opened this. I shouldn't. But then, a soft creak. Not from the storm. Not the house settling. From the hallway. Michael froze. He looked at the bedroom door, his heart punching against his ribs. He wasn't alone. Someone else was awake. Slow, cautious footsteps. They were getting closer. Michael backed away from the door, eyes locked on the handle. Another creak, and then a knock. Gentle. Polite. Wrong. Michael? A voice he recognized spoke low through the door. You still awake? It was a staff member, someone who should have been asleep hours ago. Someone who never knocked on his bedroom door unless something was wrong. Michael tried to steady his voice. Yes, I'm fine. A pause. Too long of a pause. Are you looking at the box? The voice finally asked. Michael's blood turned to ice. He had never told anyone about it. Not in years. Not even recently. How do you know about that? Michael whispered. Silence again. He could hear nothing except the rain. And breathing. Not his own. Michael glanced toward the window, searching for an escape, but his shaking legs wouldn't move. His instinct screamed that something was very wrong. The doorknob turned slowly. Michael's voice cracked. Don't come in. But the voice outside cut him off. You weren't supposed to open it. Michael stepped backward, clutching the edge of the bed for balance. His heart raced so fast it hurt. How do you know what I... Michael, the voice said, firmer now, almost cold, put the key back inside the box. And forget tonight ever happened. Michael shook his head. What's happening? Who are you talking about? That man in the picture, who is he? The handle rattled harder. Michael, do not make this worse. Lightning lit up the entire room, just long enough for Michael to glance down and see the photo on the floor. The stranger's face suddenly looked familiar. Someone he once trusted. Someone he once feared. Someone who once whispered, if you ever tell anyone what you saw, they'll never believe you. Michael's breath trembled. The door shook violently this time. Michael, open the door. He grabbed the box, clutching it to his chest like a shield. Thunder roared. Michael whispered, I remember now. And then the lights went out. Pitch black. Only rain. Only fear. Only Michael and whoever or whatever was now inside his room. Michael Jackson stood alone in the dimly lit hallway of his family's Encino home. The familiar walls suddenly feeling like a maze, trapping him with memories he had spent years trying to outrun. The night air pressed against him, humid and suffocating, a reminder that even the moonlight couldn't reach every corner of his fears. Behind him, the living room still held the echo of his mother's voice, soft but trembling. After he had confessed he couldn't continue living this life of endless pressure. The words had fallen from his lips in a whisper, but to him, it felt like he had shouted a truth the entire world ignored. I can't do this anymore. The words clung to him like a second skin. Now away from everyone, he struggled to breathe. He pressed his back against the wall and slid down slowly until he was sitting on the floor, knees pulled close to his chest. His fingers dug into his sleeves, gripping them like they were the only things holding him to reality. He heard footsteps then, gentle, cautious, moving toward him. He didn't lift his head. He didn't want anyone to see the tears running down his face. Michael? Catherine's voice came softly from the shadows. He wiped at his cheeks quickly, but there was no hiding the redness in his eyes. Catherine, he breathed, barely audible. He rarely called her Mom anymore, not out of disrespect, but because fame had stolen the most human parts of life from him. Even motherhood had to battle the crown placed upon his name. She knelt beside him, her hands warm as they cradled his face, forcing him to look at her. My son, she whispered, heartbreak swelling in her voice. You have carried the world for too long. Michael didn't trust himself to speak. His throat was tight, his mind a swirling storm of expectations, contracts, rehearsals, tabloids, paparazzi, and a constant fear of failing those who demanded more and more every second. Catherine pulled him into her arms. It had been years since he allowed that kind of comfort, years since he felt this small, this fragile, this human. I don't remember how to be me anymore, he choked out. Everyone sees the music, the dancing, the magic, but none of them see me. Catherine held his trembling hand. You are still in there, she assured him, tapping lightly over his heart. He shook his head. No, they took him a long time ago. The silence after that was heavy, painful, a mother forced to confront the cost of the world's obsession. A soft rumble of thunder outside broke the moment. Rain began tapping urgently against the windows, as if the sky itself was begging to be heard. Catherine pulled back just enough to see his eyes again. "What happened tonight?" she asked. "Why now? Why are you breaking here?" Michael looked toward the floor, voice frail. "Because I'm tired of being afraid." She frowned. "Afraid of what?" He hesitated. Then the truth cracked open inside him like a long-locked door finally splintering. "Of the people around me," he whispered. "Of those who claim they protect me, but treat me like property." Catherine inhaled sharply. Michael continued, every word trembling with memories. Deals made without his consent, rehearsals forced through sickness, medication he never asked for, pressure disguised as motivation, and voices always telling him, "You owe the world more." "They're pushing me too far," he confessed. "I feel like I'm disappearing. I can't sleep. I can barely breathe. And they don't care as long as the show goes on." His voice broke. "I feel like I'm dying in slow motion." Catherine's heart shattered. "No career is worth your soul," she whispered fiercely. Michael closed his eyes. "I don't even know if I have one left." She cupped his cheeks again, forcing him to look into her eyes that had watched him become everything the world adored while losing everything that made him feel alive. "You are my son before you are anything else," she said. "Not a product, not a king, not a miracle for the world." Her voice began to shake. "And I will not let them destroy you." Michael let the words sink into him, but hope still felt dangerous, a promise that might break him worse if it disappeared again. As she stood, she extended a hand to him. "Come," she said. "You can stay here as long as you need. Rest. Heal. Let me protect you this time." Michael stared at her hand for a long moment. The rain outside intensified, lightning flashing across the garden through the window, wild and bright, like a warning. He wanted to take her hand. He wanted to stay. He wanted to believe safety still existed. But he also knew the world would never let him go so easily. He finally took her hand and stood, leaning heavily against her. She guided him toward the guest room, his childhood room, kept exactly as he left it decades ago. Posters, toys, a bed too small for a superstar, a room for a boy who never got to be one. As he sat on the edge of the mattress, Catherine tucked a blanket beside him like she had done when he was little. "You're not alone anymore," she promised. "Not tonight. Not ever." Michael nodded, but didn't fully believe it, because written deep in his silence was the fear neither of them dared voice. Even here, even now, the world would still try to take him back. And the house, though quiet, felt like something was waiting. Like this was only the calm before the storm that would test them both. For several long seconds, Michael stood completely still, staring at the strange metal door hidden behind the wardrobe, the door Noah had told him about, the door he never remembered seeing before today. His heartbeat pounded so loudly that he felt it in his fingertips. It didn't make sense. How could a room like this exist in his own home without him knowing? Not even his most private spaces held secrets from him, or so he thought. He inhaled, shaky and slow, and placed one trembling hand on the cold steel surface of the door. His skin flinched at the temperature, metal that hadn't been touched in years. The room felt different now. The air heavy, thick, like something ancient and forgotten had just woken up. Prince and Paris stood behind him, eyes wide, waiting for him to speak, to make sense of what none of them understood. "Daddy, what's in there?" Paris whispered, voice barely audible. Michael didn't have an answer. He slowly turned the latch. It moved with an unsettling ease, as though eager to open. The door creaked as it swung toward them, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness lit only by a faint green emergency glow. The air smelled of dust, old fabric, and something like dried roses, a scent that instantly triggered an emotional pulse in Michael's chest. He knew this smell. He had smelled it in his childhood, backstage during rehearsals with his brothers, during moments when he felt scared or overwhelmed, and a soft feminine perfume would wrap around him like a promise. His mother's perfume. Michael's throat tightened. He stepped forward, his feet carrying him down the narrow stairs before his mind could tell him not to. Each step creaked like the house was warning him to turn back, but curiosity, mixed with fear, pulled him deeper. When he reached the bottom, he stopped completely. He couldn't breathe. The hidden room looked like a sealed memory, a preserved museum of a life he thought he had left behind. Old costumes hung neatly in plastic. Labeled trunks lined the walls with handwritten notes. 1972 First Tour Grammy Era, Victory Tour, Stage Worn. There were framed pictures he hadn't seen in years. Photos of him as the smiling little boy the world once adored, surrounded by his family, innocence still intact. But one item stood in the center of the room, illuminated under a single dusty spotlight. A giant mirror, and carved into its glass was a sentence in messy handwriting that froze the blood in his veins. The world took everything from you. Why you still sing for them? Michael stumbled backward, hitting one of the trunks. His breath broke into quick, shallow gasps as his hand shook uncontrollably. Prince rushed to his side. "Dad, what's wrong?" Michael tried to speak, but his lips could only tremble. Because that handwriting? He recognized it. It was his. But he had no memory of ever writing those words. He stared at the mirror, horror and sadness swirling inside him like a storm. The reflection staring back was not the strong father he wanted his children to see. It was a wounded boy buried beneath decades of expectation and exploitation. His mind flashed with memories. Sneaking snacks between rehearsals at age 5. Being shouted at to smile even when he wanted to cry. Being told that love was applause and applause was survival. Never allowed to say no. Never allowed to stop. He felt like the room was speaking to him, reminding him, "You were made for them." A voice echoed in his memories, his father's harsh tone, as sharp as the belt he sometimes carried. "You owe them everything. You are nothing without the audience." Michael clutched his head, shaking it violently. Stop. Prince and Paris exchanged terrified glances. They had never seen their father unravel like this. "Daddy, please," Paris said, holding his arm. "Let's go upstairs." But Michael couldn't move. He was trapped, not by the room, not by the mirror, but by the truth. Everything in this room existed because he wasn't allowed to rest. Every spotlight burned because he wasn't allowed to dim. Every sacrifice made him a legend, but not a man. Tears streamed down his cheeks. "I didn't want him to find this," he whispered, barely audible. Prince frowned. "Why not?" Michael finally turned toward his children, and for the first time in their lives, they saw him without the mask. No stage persona. No rehearsed smile. Just a father terrified of his own past. "Because this room reminds me of who I had to be," Michael said, voice breaking. "Not who I wanted to be." He reached out, fingertips gently touching the mirror. The words he once carved now felt like a curse he had placed upon himself. The truth he tried to bury but could never fully escape. And at that exact moment, a loud crash echoed from upstairs. All three of them froze. It wasn't the house settling. It wasn't the wind. It sounded like something or someone had entered the front door. Michael instinctively pulled his children close, his protective instincts rising above his fear. "Stay behind me," he whispered. Paris grabbed his sleeve, terrified. "Daddy, who's in our house?" Michael looked up toward the stairs leading back to the main floor, his pulse slamming in his ears. "I don't know," he whispered. But deep down, a darker thought simmered, one that made his stomach clench. What if the past wasn't just haunting him? What if it had come looking for him? And what if the secret this hidden room held was the exact reason someone wanted him silent? End of chapter 3. The clock on the hallway wall ticked louder than it ever had before, each second pounding through Michael's chest like a countdown. The air backstage felt colder, heavier, as if the building itself was holding its breath. Michael stood perfectly still, staring at the wrinkled note in his hand. The one slipped under his dressing room door, while everyone else swore nobody had been there. The message was short, terrifyingly short. "They're watching you." His fingers trembled around the paper. It wasn't the words alone. It was the handwriting. Smooth, regal strokes he instantly recognized. It looked like his own. Kenny Ortega grabbed the note from Michael's hand. Is this some sick prank? Who would do this? Michael swallowed hard, voice soft and shaken. It's not a prank. It's been happening for weeks. Kenny blinked. Weeks? Michael nodded slowly. Before every show, before every major moment, there's always a sign. A whisper, a shadow, something telling me I'm not safe out there. Javon thudded his palm against the wall, furious. Who would dare mess with a king of pop like this? Michael closed his eyes, not from fear, but from exhaustion. Being terrified every day was far more draining than any rehearsal. He had been running on adrenaline and instinct, hoping it was just stress, just imagination. But this note destroyed that fantasy. Someone wanted him scared. The dressing room lights flickered overhead. Once, twice, then steadied. Michael flinched anyway. Kenny knelt in front of him like a concerned parent. "Michael, look at me. You're surrounded by people who love you. Nobody's going to let anything happen to you." Michael forced a weak smile, but his eyes drifted past Kenny to the mirror across the room. For a split second, he swore he saw another reflection standing behind him. A tall figure. A silhouette. Not one of them. He spun around, but the room was empty. "Michael?" Kenny asked, gently touching his shoulder. Michael's breath quivered. "We need to stop the show tonight." Javon stared at him. "Are you sure? You've got a full stadium waiting out there." Michael bit down on his trembling lip. Fear doesn't care about the show. He stood, his knees almost buckling beneath him, and grabbed his silver-lined jacket from the hanger. He held it like armor, something to shield him from the eyes, from the whispers, from whatever waited in the dark. Then the hallway outside erupted in noise, frantic footsteps, stagehands shouting, security rushing past like soldiers headed to a silent war. Kenny cracked the door, just enough to peek out. "What's happening?" Michael asked. "Stay here," Carrie whispered. "Do not move." "No," Michael said immediately. "Tell me." Before Kenny could respond, Javon's radio buzzed violently. Static, then a voice. "Security to stage left. We found something. Someone. Backstage access unauthorized." And then the line cut out. Javon's head snapped toward Michael. "We're not staying. Come on." They moved quickly, out the door, down the dim side, corridor normally used for props. The metal walls groaned and rattled with the roar of 90,000 fans beyond them, stomping and chanting for their star. "Michael, Michael." The love of millions echoed, but tonight it sounded like pressure, like a demand he could no longer satisfy. As they turned the corner, Michael froze. His eyes widened. His heart stuttered. There on the concrete floor, illuminated by a single overhead light, was another note, folded precisely, waiting for him. Javon's face hardened with rage. "Don't touch it." Michael couldn't move. Kenny bent down and picked up the note with trembling hands. He unfolded it slowly. "If you go on that stage, you won't leave it." Kenny's skin turned cold. "We're going back. Calling LAPD. Calling everyone." But Michael shook his head. "No." Both men stared at him in disbelief. Michael looked straight ahead, past fear, past exhaustion, into a truth only he understood. "I've spent my whole life running from shadows, and the only place I ever felt safe was on that stage. The music, the love, it's the only time I don't feel haunted." He stepped forward, toward the main hallway leading to the arena entrance. The spotlight glare peaked from the end of it, like a sunrise waiting just beyond the dark. "If this is a threat, if they want me silent," his voice grew stronger, steadier, "then I'm going to do the opposite." He turned, looking at both of them, a spark of fearless Michael Jackson shining through, the artist who defied gravity and changed the world. "I will not let fear own me." Kenny's eyes filled with tears. "Michael," Javon radioed backup. "All units, protect the hall. He's coming." Michael reached the curtain. The roar of the crowd swelled like a tidal wave of love and anticipation. His heart raced, not with fear, with purpose. He lowered his head and whispered to himself, "Let them watch." The stage manager raised a headset hand. "Michael, you're on in 5. The lights exploded. The curtain began to rise. And somewhere in the shadows just behind him, someone whispered, "This isn't over." Michael's feet moved anyway, forward into the light, where the world believed nothing could hurt him. Michael's breath fogged slightly against the cool glass of the window as he stared out into the night. Los Angeles shimmered below, distant and endless, A galaxy of lights that always looked like love and now looked like danger. His fingers tapped nervously against his leg, each tap mirroring the thunder of his heart. They were closing in. The truth was slipping. And the one secret he had spent 30 years protecting was pushing its way back into the world, refusing to stay buried any longer. Javon stood on the other side of the room, talking quietly into his radio, trying desperately to figure out how an entire mansion with guards posted at every gate could feel like a trap. The air buzzed with tension, with urgency, with a terrifying sense that someone out there already knew too much. Michael turned away from the window. "It's happening again," he whispered, voice cracking. "What I tried to keep hidden, they're trying to use it against me." Javon lowered his radio. "Whatever it is, whatever they think they know, we can handle it." Michael closed his eyes. "You don't understand. This isn't about money, or fame, or control of the shows. This is something I promised I would protect forever." Javon stepped closer. "Protect who?" Michael hesitated. That hesitation filled the entire room. Then a distant memory ignited behind his eyes. He was 19 years old again. The world was cheering his every move, and yet his private moments were stitched together with loneliness and fear. Cameras flashed wherever he walked. The world wanted everything, his face, his voice, his future. But it was backstage after a concert in Houston. They discovered her, a lost little girl hiding behind a stack of speakers, her face streaked with tears. She couldn't have been more than 5. Abandoned, terrified, completely alone. Michael knelt down, voice gentle. "Hey, it's okay. You're safe." Her eyes lifted slowly, filled with fear and hope all at once. "You're Michael," she whispered. He nodded. "Yeah, but more important right now, who are you?" The girl clutched a worn bracelet, like it was the only thing she had left. "My name is Aaliyah, and they told me to wait here." Michael looked around desperately, but there was no one, no parent, no staff, no explanation. A stagehand rushed over moments later, panic in his face. "Oh, thank God you found her. Someone left her with us and never came back. Child services is on the way." But the girl shook her head violently, crying harder. "No, don't let them take me again. Please don't let them." That voice, that plea, it tore through him like fire, because he had begged in that same way as a child. And no one had listened. He scooped her into his arms, whispering softly, "I won't let anything bad happen to you. I promise." Child services tried to take her, but Michael fought. Not physically, not loudly, but with lawyers, resources, persistence, and a heart too big to walk away. For a year, she lived in the shadows of his protection. Hidden, safe, loved like family. Until one night, she was gone. No note, no trace, no explanation. Michael searched for years. Quietly, secretly, terrified of what the press would do to a story like that. But every lead died. Every trail vanished. And every day, guilt lived inside him like a ghost. Back in the present, Michael sat down slowly, hands shaking. She was just a child, and I failed her. And now, someone knows about her. Someone knows what she meant to me. Javon looked stunned. "Michael, are you saying this girl, this little girl, she was like family?" Michael nodded, tears filling his eyes. "I would have done anything to protect her. And you think those people downstairs are threatening to expose this?" Michael stared at the floor. "Not just expose it. Twist it. Use it to destroy me." The walls felt like they were closing in. The kind of fear that wrapped around the throat and squeezed. Michael pressed a hand to his chest, struggling to breathe. Javon knelt in front of him. "Listen to me. That was an act of love. You saved someone. And if she's out there, she remembers that. They cannot destroy something purer." Michael let out a shaky sigh. "I've lived my whole life protecting people, protecting children, because nobody protected me." His voice cracked. But the world doesn't want a hero. They want a villain. The house suddenly went silent. No footsteps. No voices. Just stillness. Javon stood, hand instinctively moving to his earpiece. "Something's wrong. I don't like the silence." Michael wiped his face, trying to steady himself. What are they waiting for? Javon looked toward the hallway. eyes narrowing. Whatever they're planning, the next move is coming now. Michael rose slowly. He felt the weight of every fear, every failure, every moment from his past crashing against him like a wave. But beneath it, just barely, was something stronger. Not fear. Fight. He looked Javon directly in the eye. I won't run anymore. I'm done hiding. If they want the truth. He stepped toward the door, voice trembling but powerful. Then they'll get the entire truth. As he reached for the doorknob, a knock echoed from the front door downstairs. One single knock. Slow, deliberate. Javon's breath caught. Michael whispered, "She's here." Darkness swallowed the entire house into silence. Michael stood frozen at the center of the backstage corridor, chest heaving like he'd just run a marathon. The emergency light still flickered, casting broken flashes of red across his pale face. The shadows seemed to breathe with the walls, stretching and shrinking like dark silhouettes alive in his memory. He didn't know how long he had been standing there. Seconds? Minutes? Time didn't feel real anymore. He pressed his palm against his heart, as if trying to keep it from splitting apart. Every voice, every whisper he had heard tonight, whether real or born from exhaustion, they all came from the same place. His past. Javon arrived at his side again, breathless. "Michael, we need to move. Please, come with me." Michael didn't answer at first. He was staring down the hallway where he had seen the faceless figure. The impossible memory of a father who was no longer alive, the ghost of pressure that had never left him. "Javon," Michael whispered, voice trembling. What if it wasn't real? Javon's eyebrows pulled together. "What do you mean?" Michael looked up, the most vulnerable look Javon had ever seen in his eyes. "What if all the scary things are inside me?" Javon stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Sir, you're tired. You're under pressure no human being was built for. But what you're feeling is real to you. And that's enough for us to take it seriously. We protect you, body and mind." But Michael shook his head, another tear slipping free. "Everyone expects magic from me. Every single day. They don't understand what it takes. How much it hurts. How much I give. And when the lights go off..." He looked down at his trembling hands. "No one sees me." The confession cracked from his chest like something breaking open. Finally released after years locked behind a superstar mask. Javon swallowed hard. "I see you, Michael." Michael searched his face, desperate for something solid, something true. "Do you?" he whispered. A pause. Then Javon nodded once, firm and unwavering. "Yes." Michael wiped his face quickly, embarrassed by his tears. "I shouldn't be afraid. I've faced stages with 90,000 people. I've healed. I've inspired. I've changed lives. Why can't I change how I feel?" Javon gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "Because you're human." The word hit Michael like a revelation, a truth he had been denied his entire life. Human. Something so simple, yet something he was rarely allowed to be. Michael looked toward the stage entrance. The roar of a distant crowd vibrated to the concrete, warm, full of life, waiting for him. "They love me," Michael whispered. "But they don't know me. They don't have to know everything," Javon said softly. "The ones who truly love you, the ones who matter, they know the real you, your kids, your mother, the people who would drop everything to keep you safe." Michael closed his eyes. Catherine, her voice echoed in his memory. "When the world pushes, hold your heart tight. God didn't give it to them. He gave it to you." He inhaled shakily, but was stronger now, fuller. He turned to Javon. "Thank you for coming back for me." Javon smiled faintly. "I never left." Michael nodded. He stepped toward the stage doors, each step steadier than the last. The corridor lights flickered, but he didn't look at them anymore. The shadows were still there. They always would be. But he wasn't running. Not tonight. As he reached the doorway, the music cue started. The beginning heartbeat of Billie Jean, pulsing like a countdown. He placed a hand over his heart. "I'm still here," he whispered to himself. "I'm still fighting." Javon gave a final nod. "Show them who you are." Michael smiled, soft, courageous, reborn, and walked through the doors into the blinding lights. The crowd erupted into a roar so powerful the ground trembled. 90,000 people, 90,000 souls calling his name. He raised his head, shoulders back, the king reclaiming his throne. The fear didn't disappear. The ghost didn't stop whispering. But he stood anyway, because courage isn't the absence of fear. It's performing despite the weight of it. The spotlight hit him, the iconic stance, the hat lowering. The crowd screamed louder, shaking the sky. And he knew then, without doubt, he would keep going, for his children, for his fans, for the little boy inside him who never stopped dancing. Michael Jackson, fragile, brave, legendary, stepped into his power again, carrying his truth not as a burden, but as a crown. The beat dropped. He smiled, and the world was healed for one more night.